Most people think property investing is a test of intelligence, or timing, or access to information, or being ahead of the market. In reality, it's a test of something much less comfortable: patience. Not passive waiting, but the ability to stay calm while nothing seems to be happening. Because in property, the hardest part isn't buying, it's holding. It's staying steady while the market does nothing, while repairs take longer than expected, while tenants leave at the worst time, while the numbers look fine but not exciting. This is where most people fail, quietly, slowly, and expensively. We live in a culture that rewards immediacy. Feedback is instant. Progress is visible. Results arrive quickly. You post something. People react. You run an ad. You see clicks. You start a side hustle. You see money move. Property doesn't work like that. Property asks you to commit capital, time, and attention, often with no short-term validation. It can feel like you made a big decision, and then the world goes silent. No applause, no scorecard, no, you're doing great. Just a building, a mortgage, a list of responsibilities, and the slow turning of time. And that mismatch creates psychological tension. People don't exit property investments only because they're bad. They exit because waiting becomes emotionally uncomfortable. They confuse nothing is happening with something is wrong. True property value is rarely obvious at the beginning. Early on, assets often look unimpressive, incomplete, underwhelming. A place might be slightly outdated. The street might be up and coming, which is another way of saying, not yet. The rental yield might be acceptable, but not impressive. The area might be stable, but not exciting. And that's the point, because real estate doesn't reward foresight immediately. It rewards the ability to see beyond present conditions, and then tolerate the silence while that future unfolds. This is psychologically difficult. The brain prefers feedback, movement, confirmation. When those are missing, doubt grows, and doubt pushes people to interfere with otherwise sound decisions: refinancing too early, selling too soon, over-renovating to feel progress, switching strategies every 6 months. Patience isn't doing nothing. Patience is not panicking while the plan is still loading. Why short-term fluctuations feel threatening? Property markets fluctuate. They always have. Rates rise, rates fall. Headlines change tone. Confidence comes and goes. But fluctuations don't damage long-term outcomes nearly as much as reactions do. Impatient investors experience volatility as danger. They interpret temporary declines as signals to act, to sell, to exit, to cut losses, even when the underlying asset hasn't become worse. What's happening psychologically is simple. Uncertainty feels like loss, even when nothing has actually been lost. A valuation dips, and suddenly it feels like your decision is being judged in public. You start checking the market too often. You refresh listings like it's a stock chart. You begin negotiating with your own anxiety. And then you make expensive moves to feel safe. Selling during uncertainty, pausing improvements out of fear, rushing into the next deal to recover the feeling of momentum. Those who can emotionally tolerate temporary discomfort often emerge intact or stronger when conditions normalize. Those who can't crystallize losses that didn't need to exist. The hidden costs of impatience. Here's what impatience usually looks like in property. It doesn't look like panic. It looks like constant tinkering, constant optimizing, constant changing, constant maybe we should. Many people chase quick wins, flipping instead of holding, frequent remortgaging to extract equity too early, chasing the next hot area every year, renovating beyond what the tenant market pays for turning a stable asset into a complex project. And the reason is rarely strategy. The reason is emotional. Because action feels productive. Action feels like control. But in property, action can become a tax you pay to avoid boredom. Meanwhile, the real wealth mechanisms are quiet. Long-term ownership allows small, predictable forces to accumulate. Gradual appreciation, debt reduction, rent growth over time, demand, normalization, inflation quietly working in your favor. These effects are not exciting. They don't feel productive day to day, which is exactly why most people abandon them. Patience isn't just a virtue here, it's a filter. It removes those who need stimulation from the process. Time is doing more work than you are. This is the part most investors intellectually understand, but emotionally don't respect. Time is doing more work than you are, and time works in a way that feels almost insulting because you want effort to equal results. But property doesn't reward effort in a linear way. Sometimes you do everything right, and nothing happens for a year. Then slowly, the area improves. New transport links arrive. A school gets better ratings. The local high street changes. Demand shifts. And suddenly, years of nothing become something. That's why impatient investors feel cursed. They're not cursed. They're just trying to harvest before the season. Property is one of the few games where being early often feels identical to being wrong, until time proves otherwise. Patience as a competitive advantage. In an impatient environment, patience becomes rare, and rarity creates advantage. While others react to headlines, patient investors observe patterns. While others chase certainty, patient investors accept ambiguity. This doesn't make them smarter, it makes them emotionally regulated. They don't need constant reassurance. They don't confuse movement with progress. They don't treat every fluctuation like a referendum on their self-worth. They run fewer experiments. They make fewer emergency decisions. They avoid the expensive cycle of panic to action to regret to reset, and that alone eliminates a large percentage of mistakes. Most property losses don't come from buying the wrong building. They come from buying the right building and then sabotaging it with impatience. Why? Patience is a skill, not a trait. Patience isn't something you're born with. It's something you practice. It requires 1. Reframing progress. Progress in property often looks like nothing changed. But behind the scenes, the mortgage balance is shrinking. The asset is stabilizing. The area is evolving. 2. Redefining success. Success isn't, I made money this month. Success is, I avoided a bad decision this year. 3. Resisting short-term validation. Most investor mistakes come from seeking emotional relief. They want a decision to feel good immediately. But good investing often feels boring at first. So you build systems that support patience. A clear holding timeline, a cash buffer, so you're not forced into panic, realistic expectations about void periods and maintenance, and most importantly, a reason for owning the asset beyond excitement. When investors shift from asking, why isn't this working yet, to what will still make sense years from now, their behavior changes, stress decreases, decisions slow down, outcomes improve. Not because the market changed, but because their relationship with time did. Property doesn't test your ability to predict. It tests how you handle silence, how you sit with uncertainty, how you respond when nothing confirms your choice, how you behave when progress is invisible. Most people don't fail because they're wrong. They fail because they can't wait long enough to be right. They don't lose to the market. They lose to their own need for reassurance.